Good evening. This is meeting of the Board of Selectmen on Thursday, January 22nd. The first item on our agenda is a continuation of the public hearing to act on the application of Condyne Capital Partners LLC for assisted living facility at 580 Main Street. We've received a letter from the Condyne Engineering Group, Mark Dibb, who indicated that he has, I guess for personal reasons, was going to be unable to be here this evening, and he had a very detailed letter in which he indicated many of the issues that had been raised by the Design Review Board had been addressed, but I think it's probably preferable to have someone representing the applicant before we close our hearing. So maybe it may make sense to continue this hearing again.
Has he indicated when he'd be available?
He would be available for our next meeting on February 5th.
Okay, well, then I move that we continue the hearing on Condyne Engineering for the assisted living facility to our next meeting at 7.
Actually, we've already queued up something for 7 o'clock, so maybe we should say 8-ish.
8? Yeah, 8 o'clock.
What's on at 7?
The continuation of the discussion with DOT regarding 117.
So it's be over at Davis Hall.
And maybe you want to say it will be at Davis Hall.
Sure.
Do you want to make it 8?
Ish.
8-ish?
8. Well, no, we have to continue to a time.
I know, because the other one went almost over an extra hour, so.
8:30?
8:30.
8:30?
Can you say 8:30 on our next meeting?
I'll second that again.
Okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And, all right, just to be clear, it's being continued to our meeting on February 5th at 8:30, and that meeting is going to be in Davis Hall. We have 3 poll hearings on our agenda, but we can't start those until the scheduled times, 7:15, 7:20, and 7:25. So maybe to fill in the time here, we could go with the ever-popular Town Administrator Report Minuteman update.
Fortunately, we have that on there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief. We do have our next meeting scheduled for 7 p.m. on Monday, the 2nd of February. It is a joint meeting with, well, it's not necessarily a joint meeting, but the school committee will be in attendance to observe the meeting, and we hope to, my expectation is we'll be getting final renderings and cost estimates for each of the 3 options. Well, actually, technically 4 options: the build new, the build new/rehab, just reno in place, or I guess do nothing and do nothing but code repairs, which so I guess technically it's 4. So, so we'll be hearing at least 3, because that's what MSBA is expecting. That's what we have to deliver to MSBA. And then in conjunction with that night at 6 o'clock, 1 hour before that, the communications committee is also meeting, and the communications committee is basically involved into those of us who are also on the building committee. So communications from 6 to 7, building committee 7 to 8:30. And then on Friday the 6th, we have the municipal meeting out there that, as I've said before, Selectmen, FinCom, and the like town administrators are invited to, where there will be the first, I guess, formal public presentation of the cost data and so forth. So it'll be out twice that week. It'll really be hitting the streets on the 6th. But I can give I guess a pre-update on the 5th. It'll be very interesting to see.
Okay. That's all?
That's.
In advance?
I could drag it out a bit longer.
Can you make some stuff up?
I could. I have.
We could is Ken here? Actually, this would be a good fill-in item. If we move up from the Bolton Access TV agreement discussion. Ken?
That's why I came early. I didn't think it would be quite this early, but
All right,
very efficient of you. So, I was in last meeting and discussed a few things, and then I sent you copies of the draft agreement, which is an update of the original agreement between the town and Bolton Access TV for the next 3 years, potentially 10, depending on how it looks in 3 years. And then the suggested reduction in the rent, which I discussed before, and I sent you a little write-up with some of my ideas in addition to something I alluded to the last time, which was the data from October 13 to September 14. Shelley, that had the electricity and oil prices included in there. So, so you have that information, and I'd be happy to review well, any of those really, but particularly the rationale for the rent reduction if you would like, or if you just want to ask questions, I could do that as well, whichever works better for you.
Well, I know we talked about the reduction in the rent some time ago, and, I think it kind of makes sense. I mean, you guys are paying more for rent than what it costs to heat the entire building. And I think we even discussed the possibility of raising the rent for the Conservation Trust, since I believe they're only paying $500 a year.
Yes, that's
So
right.
I think, we need to make an adjustment at that end as well, but I saw your proposal, I'm fine with your proposal.
The proposal again was for $600 a month for the rent, and if you, assuming that the last year numbers are correct, then that would completely cover the electricity for kind of the middle months of the year and make a dent in the electricity. It'd be like 3/4 or more of the electricity cost of the building the rest of the year. And I think you could make a case that you would have to heat the building anyway. You wouldn't have to use the electricity, obviously, but you probably would have to heat the building as long as you're going to have a meeting room there.
Mhm.
You don't want the thing to freeze up, and so. But in any case, if you assume the electricity, then the $600 a month would be about 88% of what was paid during that year. And if you include all the utilities, then the proposed rent would even be nearly 2/3. It would be over 63% of all the utilities. So that's
Part of the rationale for this was that, as you're thinking about a merger, that you're paying much more than these other towns. What are those other towns getting in terms of their what do you call them, PEG funds, the funds that, every quarter when we're allocating the 18,000 or the
they get
22,000?
They get more because they have more subscribers. Their towns are larger, so they have about 2,000 subscribers in Sterling and I think, 2,500 in Sterling, I think, and about 2,000 in Lancaster. And so between them, their PEG funds are in the order of, I think, more than $200,000. So they're quite a bit more than what ours are.
Mm-hmm.
And the space they have varies. They use space in the former school that's behind the library in Lancaster. And they, as we did, renovated a room that the Selectmen's meetings, and I think some of the other ones do as well. And then they have a couple of quite small office and equipment rooms. But actually they have less space than we do. And they have more space, but not as usable space in Sterling. They have a room in the basement of a school there that they get for the money that they contribute. But it's more, they even describe it more, and I don't know if this is for accounting reasons or what, but they even describe it more as a donation that they make to the towns, that there doesn't seem to be an expectation that they would, on anybody's part, that they would be paying it rent. So.
If there is a merger, would your corporation dissolve, as this nonprofit dissolve, and the assets go over to the?
Presumably, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all to be worked out, but presumably that would be the way that it would work.
Mm-hmm.
And the PEG funds would transfer, and the rental expense would transfer, and the use of the studio and that sort of thing would be there. And they would sign something like this with you that is and then you need to redo the lease as well, but they would sign some kind of agreement. In fact, the agreement they have with their towns is a lot more complex than what this one is. But
I think for the time being, though, that whole merger is on.
correct.
And Bolton Access TV has hired a consultant to go through looking at operational procedures and the like. And at the end of that 6-month period, there'll be some things coming out of that, but, there's no guarantee that there will or will not be any kind of merger
Well,
between.
we can use the additional cash in for staff and other things of that sort anyway. So we just kind of like to do that, but it would make us more attractive as well.
How was the original rent put together, with the annual increases and all of that? You were probably on this side of the table when that happened, so.
Actually, I wasn't, because I took over down there before we finished the Houghton building. There was discussion, and part of the discussion was one member of the board felt that we should be paying market rate, which I don't know what market rate for office space is, but his view was that market rate was a certain amount, and it was way more than $1,000 a month, and so he kind of begrudgingly went along, and everybody else thought that, well, okay, we'll go with 1,000. And part of that was this concern that we were putting a lot of money into the building, and so what would happen to that? And so that's when we put in that provision about protecting our so it was agreed to, but I don't know that it was not done based on any data, because we had no real way to know what it would cost to do the building, because the prior uses were totally different from ours, plus the renovation work that we did, I think, at least partly helped with with some of the efficiency of the building. We didn't replace windows or anything, but I think overall, we put close hole insulation in the floor and things of that sort. So there were some improvements that were made there, but we had nothing to go on. So it was really just kind of an agreement that we were able to live with, and that the one selectman who really wanted more than that was able to live with. And everybody knew at the time that the rest of the people in the building were not paying any rent to speak of, but also we knew we were going to be there more of the day and more days of the year than the other people were, and so we weren't quibbling about them.
I had a couple of questions about the agreement. And one is, I think that's kind of a harsh term, that the town can cancel on 30 days' notice.
Yep.
But I guess if Bolton Access TV's okay with that, then we shouldn't complain. I know, though, and maybe it's because it refers to bylaws that I haven't seen. There are members of your board that are appointed by the selectmen and plus a selectman who's an ex officio board member. Is that the way it works?
Yes, although right now, it's only, it's only A that applies, so you could do more, but right now, the only thing that you've done is to have a member
Right. There's
on
only
our
one.
board.
Okay,
But you have the prerogative to appoint additional ones if you wanted to do it.
and how many board members do you have
Right
currently?
now, we have 8, and we actually have one vacancy, and there's a provision that with a vote of the board, it could increase up to, I think it's 11 or 12.
Okay,
I mean, and it's a little bit loose because you've got the schools, and they're allowed to appoint 2 people, and they've appointed 1. So we kind of copy emails to the principal at the high school, but he's not really an active member of the board. So it kind of depends on how they would want to function, and if they wanted a greater say, then they would be able to do that. But it's at least, and I guess the other way I look at it is if you decided that you didn't want to have somebody actually sit with us the way Stan does, but would prefer to appoint somebody else, that you would have that prerogative, and it would almost be kind of an either-or sort of thing. But, you know, we're flexible as to however you want to do it. And the other towns, just so you know, they don't have a member of the selectmen on theirs. They have the ability to appoint them, but for whatever reason, neither town has appointed him. I don't know why, but they haven't, so. So that's the reason, and that is a little bit, I will admit that that's a little bit cumbersome, but that's the intent of it, is to give you some flexibility to have a little bit more participation if you wanted to do it.
The one other thing I noticed is you've been doing an extraordinary job in terms of covering all sorts of meetings, but all that's listed in section 9 is the selectmen advisory and then, you know, and others. And I don't know if we wanted to add more detail there to make sure the school committee's included, or if, you know, I suppose if there was ever a problem, we do have that 30-day notice provision, so maybe it's not necessary to add more detail.
Let me mention, I guess, the phrase that's most important, I think, from our end of things, is to the extent resources are available. And what I guess I would and I have no problem, since we're recording way more meetings than most the other towns that we've talked with in the potential merger have they do very few. They do the selectmen, and they drag their finance committee kicking and screaming to it, and they've been thrown out of others and things of that sort. So we don't have that issue at all. I think the important thing is that, and the reason that we put selectmen advisory and other boards or special interest meetings in, is that we'll do any of those that we can. But it may be that sometime, either because there's multiple meetings going on, or just because we don't have the resources or whatever, we may not be able to always do every single meeting that comes along, and I wouldn't recommend requiring that.
Yeah, all right.
Because
that makes
everybody
sense.
may conclude
Sure.
that it doesn't make any sense. So, so the important thing is that we have the resources available, and that you let us know when they're gonna be. And if there are changes, then give us as much notice as possible.
I mean, I think they've done a pretty
Yeah.
good job of catering to pretty much everybody.
Oh, an extraordinary job.
And we have-
And actually, it sounds like might be an issue on the merger, though, if
Yeah, and we have-
everyone else isn't doing as good a job.
We actually have more,
Yeah,
we have more meeting rooms wired and more
yeah.
of most boards than the other towns do. And I was with the guy from Littleton the other day, and they have 5 rooms where they can do things. But generally speaking, the 2 plus the school that we have are more than most of them have.
Yeah. All right, well, no, with that explanation, I'm fine with this, the agreement between the town and the Bolton Access Television.
I'm fine, well, since I'm on the board, I thought it was gonna have to be fine with me.
Well, I will move that we ratify the agreement between Town of Bolton and Bolton Access TV.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye. Okay.
And then, did you want us to make, I mean, if we're going to amend the lease, that's actually gonna have to be in writing. I
Yes.
assume the lease requires that.
It does. We
But-
can update the lease, and so we can update the lease and have it
Yeah,
Yeah.
available for signature at the next
okay.
meeting.
Okay, and we should probably look at that anyway and make sure that the expiring language on the equipment was okay and all that sort of stuff. So we're gonna take a look at it. I'd be happy to work on that with Donna.
Great, great.
Thank you.
I saw it on the data, I'll leave that with you, and you guys can sign it and send us back. Okay, great. Something or whatever it is.
Thank you.
That's good. Guys?
Have a nice evening.
All right, we're gonna return to the agenda in our original form, and the next item is a public hearing on the petition of Verizon New England Inc. and Massachusetts Electric for 3 jointly owned poles on Wattaquatic, and the first hearing involves poles that are located on Wattaquatic, 380 feet south of West Berlin Road, 1,110 feet south of West Berlin Road, and 755 feet north of Sunset Ridge. And we have sort of plans of that location. Is there anyone here from?
Okay, I'm Kellyanne Conovan, I represent Verizon, and basically National Grid is just doing a lot of preventive maintenance. They're upgrading a lot of their pole lines and everything. Most of these poles are mid-span poles we need to set to just decrease the span between existing poles. You'll see a lot of poles they've already replaced in place. They're just larger. The clearances can go a little higher. They're in the ground for their support, so hopefully no broken poles, no storm damage. Basically the reason.
I've seen lots of second poles. I haven't seen very many wires move to those yet, though.
The whole pole line's not up. There is a process in place as far as.
I mean, there's poles on Meadow that have been in there since June that nothing's been moved on. Drive down on 17, there's double poles that nothing's been moved on.
I mean, the most I
Yes,
can tell you, I can put you in contact with the proper persons at the companies. What happens is once the poles are set, Verizon sends notification to the cable companies. Cable's supposed to move everything, notify Verizon that they've moved. Verizon moves all their stuff, notifies Electric. Electric's the last to move everything over. They'll notify Verizon when that's complete, as long as fire alarms moved, if there is any, and then the old poles are removed. I mean, that's the process, timeframes I can.
Well, that's the theory, but
That's
I mean, that's,
theory.
it's all regulated.
I know, and we don't mean to shoot the messenger, because
No, that's fine. Believe me,
what's
it's a
happening, but
common question everywhere.
right, well, no, it's sort of statewide, it's a problem.
I said statewide, but I mean, in town, we have double poles that have been sitting for 5 years now, and nothing's happened, and,
The most I can tell you is I'll
Quite against
give you-
state law, so it's,
and then for the audience out there, unfortunately, I found out that we can't deny these on the basis of either previous double poles that and not removed, or if these poles that are going in cause a double pole situation because of state law, we cannot deny it on that item. Now, apparently, Don talked to Representative Hogan again today, and they're trying to get that changed, and I know that there's at least one gentleman in the audience that I had a discussion with last week about that. But unfortunately, our hands are tied relative to in that regard. All we can do is continue to persist.
And the only thing I can tell you, everything I'm petitioning for here tonight is not double pole. It's a brand new location where there's not currently a pole there. Obviously, the point of petitioning. I can put you in touch with the proper people at the respective companies.
I think
That's-
it's on Don's speed dial.
you know.
I'm aware of the property.
I mean, it's been a long ongoing issue
Yeah.
here and in a lot of other towns.
And we apologize for shooting the messenger.
No,
So it's-
I got it.
I mean, I would personally encourage people to contact your representative's office to encourage them to push the issue in the State House.
I can tell you that while the tree warden is unable to attend tonight, he did say that he looked at all 3 locations and that none of them would require tree removal, just some trimming, some pruning. But no trees need to be removed.
All right. Do we have any public comment on these first 3 polls? Mark?
Martha Remington, private citizen not representing the Historical Commission. I think it's important that we get the big picture on what is happening on Wattaquatic Road, where there are at least 30 trees slated for removal. And I have been told that National Grid is putting 3-phase power up Wattaquatic Hill Road to Bolton. Now, my question about 3-phase power, and I've only heard rumors about this the last 30 years. It's good for heavy equipment. We have it up Hudson Road already. We have it up Still River Road already. What is 3-phase power going to do for the average residents of Bolton? And I don't think that you can have a 5-minute hearing on 3 new poles when they're putting new poles virtually up and down the entire road, part of which is scenic, and all these trees are slated for removal.
But the tree
And I know
warden
this is not a hearing, a tree hearing. There will be a scenic road hearing for the park. But I did
Right,
speak with
and the issue actually before us, and the reason they have to come to Selectmen is a state law, sort of an old state law, about the project not incommoding the public use of public ways. So our focus is, the sort of poles in relation to the road. I mean, you raise a good point, but it's not something that we're gonna be able to address here on the tree
Or are they
issue.
maybe going to replace each tree that's cut, and these are huge trees, with more poles? I mean, we
I
have to
believe-
find out the full story.
I believe Don said that the tree warden said that no trees have to be cut.
For these 3 poles that you're addressing now in
that's
this
correct.
5 minutes.
And that's what we're addressing now. So your question is really out of scope of the hearing here.
No, I think it's important we decide this as a whole instead of piecemeal. I know they come and you can have a hearing for 1 pole anywhere in town. You have to have a hearing to place the pole. But these are double poles. This young woman
No,
is.
no, she just said, you're wrong,
No,
she
but I
just said
mean,
these are
every
new
pole
poles.
yeah, but I'm just saying, look at Wattaquatic Hill Road with all the double poles, all the trees that are slated to be cut, and we need someone here from National Grid, I think, rather than just Verizon, because they're shared.
Martha,
Thank you.
this hearing is to put up new poles. They're not double poles, and there are no trees that are being cut. So your question is not germane to this hearing. When that comes up, we can have that discussion. But
Will
we're
that
not.
be separate from the scenic road hearing? Will your Board of Selectmen hearing be?
There would probably be both a scenic road hearing and a shade tree hearing. The shade tree hearings before the tree warden, the scenic road hearings before the planning board. Decisions of the tree warden can be appealed to us. So that's the,
Well, I just have a
procedure.
question. Why is Bolton getting slated for another 3-phase power line? Thank you.
are you able to speak to that or no?
I am not,
Okay.
and the best I can do is give you the engineering contact at Mass Electric
Okay.
or National Grid that can answer those
Okay.
questions.
Any other comments related to these 3 polls?
Sort of.
Introduce yourself, Al.
Yeah, Area Conservation Trust. We're also concerned about some of these same things that Martha is, and it may be that these 3 exact poles may skirt around this, but I do want to check on my understanding of what you this old law that you're talking about, incommoding the use of the public ways, and whether commoding and whether the use of the public ways actually includes their use as scenic roads once they're marked as scenic roads, and that if these things then influence that condition of the accommodation, whether they're game for consideration of acceptance or denial. Sir, Larry.
I think you're stretching. I think you're stretching it to try and, I mean,
Yes.
the presumption of the statute, which talks about, it starts out as great language, a company incorporated for the transmission of intelligence by electricity or by telephone, whether by electricity or otherwise, ... gets to build stuff, subject to hearing that, a determination that it shall not incommode the public use of public ways or endanger or interrupt navigation. So it's, I think that to suggest that a
Public use?
a scenic road we could tell the utilities, you can't put up poles because it's a scenic road. I think that's, I don't think we have standing to do that.
Okay.
So,
Can I expand that a little bit? And that's
yeah,
that.
we have two more of these hearings.
I know, but they're all the same. If we resolve.
Okay, as long as
I'm not
you
gonna-
get all your comments in on this
Well,
one.
I'm not gonna, unless they're different, I'm not gonna make the same comment again. I just want to understand it in general, and that's that, maybe you can't deny it, but can you put conditions on it? Don't, in fact, interfere with the scenic aspect of it, in the way they do it. I understand that you
Well-
can't do denial, but you could probably do
No,
conditions.
and I think if folks are saying this location is bad, it ought to be moved 50 feet down the road, I think that's something that, you know, we're certainly willing to raise, and if people have that, I mean, that's the purpose of the hearing, is for folks to say, can this pole go to a different location, or this is a bad spot, it's right next to a driveway, it's gonna, you know, those types of issues, and that's why they've got this in the hearing, it's, you know, to the foot as to where these poles are being proposed.
Okay, well, in that case, then
Except
maybe
you
you
draw a
should,
straight line for the road, and it isn't straight, so it's a little...
Well, they,
You know, we'll get to you as soon as we're done with,
I hear you.
well, in that case, maybe that, if this is down to the foot, and we need to see its relation to other trees and so on, maybe the hearing needs to be continued.
Well, I think you're stretching it a little bit even further. And you need to be reminded that the scenic road bylaw has nothing to do with the scenic nature of the road. The scenic road bylaw has to deal with cutting into either trees or stone walls in the easement, the town's easement of that particular road. And if you also recall, years ago, not every road in Bolton is designated as a scenic road. Planning board, we tried to push, and I believe you might have been on the planning board at the same time, we tried to push that every road in Bolton would have this, be afforded the same,
I remember
same
this.
ability. And there was one citizen in town that vehemently fought against it. So, but the scenic road has nothing to do with the scenic nature of the road. It has to deal with primarily the cutting of trees and the disturbance of a stone wall when cutting in ingress or egress from that particular road.
other comments? Gentleman in the back, did you want to identify yourself?
I'm in the next stretch,
Okay.
Really quiet.
And any other comments on these three poles? Sir?
I'm Brian Barabee, I'm on Manor Road. Could you reiterate the necessity of the poles? Was it a span issue? The spans aren't up to code nowadays? The necessity for additional poles being stuck in?
yeah, span and clearance issues, correct.
And has the code changed? I guess my question is, if they're not up to code, do you not just have to do the entire road now?
It's not necessarily code, it has to do with how many attachments are on the poles and the weight of the wires.
Okay.
Because the spans, if they're too great and the weight slopes down too much, the clearances aren't proper. So,
what limits it to just is it just bringing additional hookups for the winery? Why do these poles necessitate an extra pole being put in? Is it gonna go down the entire road? Is this being phased in?
The whole pole line down the entire road. And if
Okay.
they're adding three-phase on all these poles, that heavier electric line will have to be attached to everything.
And,
So those additional poles will allow, like I said, for the clearances above the road or the side of the roads.
and is it something that, going back to our double pole issue, are they gonna wait until they put in every single pole they need before they'll switch over? I mean,
Generally, they have to, because that's when they'll attach and move all the lines at once.
okay. So how many years approximately until they have all the new poles put in? How long of a project is this?
That I don't know. The general answer to the question is, once I receive my approval from the town, these signed orders after they're approved at hearing, they are issued to our construction department, and rule of thumb, they have a 4 to 6 week period before, where they schedule the work to be done, just because they have their crews scheduled out ahead of time. So whether it's a little further out than that, whether they're looking for work and can do it because of the weather right now, they'll move it up a little. That's the
Yeah,
best I can say.
and I guess the other question you probably won't be able to, is like the cause of the increased hookups, like what are all the increased usage that's currently going on that's requiring additional hookups or additional, weight carrying load?
That I don't know, and that again is something, if you refer back to the electric company, they can tell you why the three-phase upgrade, I don't know that one.
In the back?
Hi, I'm Kathleen McKenna, I live at 408 Wattaquatic, and I just have a couple of questions about the poles. The 3 new ones that are going in, I already see poles there that already exist. Are they being replaced?
No, these are new poles, they're in locations that are not there. Where yours is, there is a stake between your driveway and the driveway next door. There's a
Which one?
grass
Actually,
area.
Yours, that's a different hearing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it?
Which one are you looking at? Now, you're looking at the one from West Berlin Road right now. So that's the hearing we're in the middle of. It's
No.
on West Berlin on Hopkins.
No, we,
No, that's the one
Yeah, no, this isn't her.
right, we're,
Okay, so that's the one we're doing right now.
Yeah.
She's on this one.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So, do you want me to answer, or do you want to wait? Do you want to open it to the hearing?
No,
well, that's right, take serious.
So,
So,
to your point, your comment earlier, Larry, that, that this is really to help fine tune the locations. Are the locations marked out there? Do people know where these poles are being proposed?
I believe all the stakes are in place. I actually drove by them all before the hearing.
Comments on these 3 poles? Mark?
Mr. Chairman, I have an administrative question. Why are these petitions not advertised as public hearings?
I think the notice is provided to, well,
Town clerk posted and sent to the abutters.
I mean on the agenda.
What about,
And did you read the hearing notice? The reason I ask this is simply, I know when we do hearings, we have to read the hearing notice, and they're in the papers, maybe they have been in the papers. I just am confused, because I wanted to come to these because they were petitions, but now I understand these are hearings. And normally, we have site visits for pole sightings.
not for these, we have not.
We don't always have site visits.
Actually, it's the statute that determines the notice that has to be provided. It says, a public hearing shall be held on the petition, and written notice of the time and place of the hearing shall be mailed at least 7 days prior thereof by the clerk to all owners of real estate abutting upon that part of the way, where the pole is located. So we've complied with the
Right,
statute.
I'm just, as a citizen, why didn't it say a petition hearing or whatever? Because I always think of them as pole hearings.
Well, that's what it is. I mean, basically, the document I submit to the town's public.
I think you're being
And they just say we
disingenuous.
have a-
No,
You know,
no,
of
I
course,
was
it's
just
a
asking.
petition of Verizon and Mass Electric to place 3 jointly owned poles. You knew that was a poll hearing. You've been at these, you've talked, you've presented to us at these hearings.
I have one in my front yard.
Right, but so you know, I mean, I think I mean, you're wasting our time to suggest
No, I'm
you
just
didn't know this was
wondering
gonna be
why
a
it
poll
didn't
hearing.
say hearing, that's all. So with Verizon and National Grid, a petition is a hearing. Thank you.
Any other comments on these 3 polls? All right. What's your pleasure on the first petition that's before us?
I have no further questions, and
I
I have no
will,
problem.
I will grudgingly move that we approve them. I don't really like the pine forest that we're building in town here, but it's, it is what it is, so.
You're gonna make a formal motion?
Yes, I'm grudgingly moving that we approve these 3 polls.
Wait, this is for 3 polls?
This is for the first, yeah, there are 3.
First of 3 petitions.
So this
I'm-
petition is for 3 polls, and then we got
Yes,
another
correct.
petition.
We have 3
Yes.
separate petitions.
Yeah, I'm not sure why it's, I mean, it's one project, I'm not sure why it's broken
Okay.
down this way.
Basically,
No, no,
because
I
Verizon's engineering jobs, they need.
Yeah.
Sorry, my mistake. We're wasting your time.
Well, yeah, it complicates our life, so it's,
Little mine too, believe me.
All right, so you made the motion, I'll second it.
Bless you.
All those in favor?
Aye. Okay.
All right. We are now going to open
Where's the
a
third X?
second public hearing. This one involves the petition of Verizon New England, Massachusetts Electric to place 4 poles. And these are also on Wattaquatic. They are 650 feet south of Sunset Ridge, 910 feet south of Sunset Ridge, 1,180 feet south of Sunset Ridge, and 1,445 feet south of Sunset Ridge. And I gathered, well,
Okay, so
how does
basically,
the purpose of these relate to, as you've already described?
reason upgrading the pole line and the spans clearances need to be taken care of over there, so I do need to add these 4 poles.
And I think we had someone,
Yes, I have some
someone in the,
questions and
well,
comments.
the woman next to you, I think
No,
we,
let him go first.
okay.
All right, I'm Tim Udall, I live at 380 Wattaquatic. First new pole is in front of my house. One comment on the letter that was sent to me, it would have helped me a whole lot to know what a JO was, without
Jointly
having
owned,
to
sorry.
tear hair out and figure it out. I finally figured it out. I got out my GPS and walked these measurements on the road, and I can see why they're needed, span. I want to confirm that all of these, I assume this is true of all the poles, that they're actually in the taking of the road and not on my property. Is
Correct.
that correct? Okay. Having said that, the only concern I have is the first pole at 650 feet, which is going to be close to my driveway. I have not seen any stakes. I checked
Yes.
Monday.
There's a stake I actually drew in the driveway, so I know it's staked. It's just a wooden square stake, it's got like a white
Do
and
you
an
happen to
orange
recall
top
how
on
far
it.
from my driveway it is?
I think it was like centered right between the 2 driveways, yours and 380, 376, there's
Oh,
like
really?
that like garage area
Alright,
on 380 there,
Okay, I'm good with that.
so,
All right. That's it, that's the only questions or comments that I have.
okay.
Hi, I'm Kathleen McKenna, I live at 408, and what I'm confused about is an existing pole. I see that existing pole, and I see you putting in 3 new ones, but I see 2 existing ones in approximately those locations. Are those coming down, or?
No, those are staying up, these are actually going between those.
Why is this one mentioned as existing and the others aren't shown on this as existing? Why is just this one?
This one just gives you an idea where pole 61-1 is going across the street from the existing pole.
Okay.
That's why we have all the pole numbers on here and the footages, so that they can tell where they are. Believe me, I know it's confusing too.
So we're gonna be putting in another pole next to these poles that already exist then?
It's not next to them, but between them.
A
I mean,
couple of
there's,
feet, yeah.
there's a good span. I mean, there's gotta be like 100 feet between them.
So
I'm
it'll
gonna
come
put
smack
like 50
either
feet away kind
in
of thing.
front of my house then, it sounds like then.
There's a stake out there too.
Where is
So
it?
it's,
In the snow, I mean,
the
snow.
driveway,
I haven't seen the stake, and I was
the
out
new,
there yesterday.
the new pole, if you're on Wattaquatic looking at your driveway, the
Yeah.
new pole is gonna be to the left of your driveway.
How far left?
I don't have that measurement on here. I know the next
It'd be
property
wonderful
over
if it
was
was on the border of the, so that it doesn't destroy my view.
No, it doesn't, it's not like right in front of a window or a house or anything like that. I did
Well,
look
to the
at that.
left,
I mean,
to the left,
kind of have a
well, to the
banking
left of my
right there.
driveway would be my window view, so that's why I'm curious.
And there's kind of a banking there too on the,
Yeah, if
thing,
it's,
so your house is set up.
yeah, and I don't wanna pull right in front of my house. It would be great if it could be on the border between my house and my neighbor's house. Cause it sounds
I
like.
mean, the best I can tell you is it is staked. And when I was out there tonight, it didn't appear like it was like blocking windows or anything like that.
So, okay.
I mean, I don't know where the property line
Could you
is.
say
sitting
left
right
of the
here.
driveway, how many feet?
I didn't measure that, I don't know. I mean,
So, all right, so I'm just trying to understand, because we've already got poles that are pretty close together now.
I mean, the only thing I can suggest then, and to actually settle it and avoid having to come back for another hearing, is if we approve this hearing contingent upon her agreeing to that stake location, if we have a problem, we can move it, 5, 10
That would be
feet kind of
great.
thing.
That would be.
At least that gets us through the hearing.
Sure, I mean,
We don't have to
the
come back.
alternative would be to,
And then I'll-
continue the hearing, but if,
I'll
I mean, if,
verify
are
with you
you,
guys once it's approved.
Yeah, I would
I
like
mean, is
to have
that
a say.
satisfactory to you?
I would like to have a say in where the pole goes.
Fine with me. That's fine with me.
And so this is the poll on our, using the notation here,
It's that one.
62.5, okay.
Yes, 62.5, yeah.
So if you want to do that, just contingent upon she agrees where the stake location is. If it's a problem, I'll just repetition a new application for that one pool.
Yep.
And then I'll just,
Yeah.
once I confirm with her, I'll verify with you guys.
Mark, are there any other?
61-1 is on the other side of the road, and there will be a guy wire across there over to 61, or,
I can go through all my engineering hints, but I don't.
or is that just, or is that the wires crossing across?
Nope, actually, it looks like this is the right pole. It looks like there's a guy wire in a tree currently. So we'll take the wire out of the tree and attach it to the pole. My writing is this tiny.
So right now, from pole T61, there's a guy
Okay, so
wire
there will be a guy,
across.
there will be a guy wire. It is a stub pole.
You're saying that there's an existing guy wire across that goes into a
That one I
tree?
don't know.
Okay.
There's a couple other ones I did have, but,
Yeah, National Grid.
okay, they don't draw an existing wire here. And that's pole 61, right? 744.
Okay, thank you.
So that's just gonna be a stub pole, I'm gonna say with the added weight on the pole line.
Mhm.
You have a little bit of a curve in the road there, that's just supporting that, so that
Okay.
when you add the weight to the line, the other pole's not gonna lean.
So that's to support that existing pole across the street, okay. Yep,
Did Mark comment on this one?
I'm sorry?
He did, he commented on all three.
Okay, what's his comment on this one?
The comment on all three was that no trees had to be
Oh,
removed.
okay.
and if anything, some light pruning would need to be done.
Okay, Don. That, I understand what Mark said. It's that like, it's only to install these poles that's coming on, not on the path of the wire.
He's commenting on any impact to the poles and how they would run the wire or anything. It would be,
Really?
yeah.
So
That all falls within the scope of the pole.
So why are all these trees marked?
I don't know. That'll be taken up, I guess, at another hearing. I actually can't answer that.
Yeah, but I just wondered, it seems kind of backwards then, if once we approve placing the poles, if we then decide there are trees we want to save with the tree hearing, by maybe zigzagging the wire across the road to a pole across the road, then already set. Maybe we should have had the tree hearing first and then the pole hearing.
Well, but no, Al,
Yeah,
the tree warden has said no trees have to be taken down to put these poles in. So if that's the case, then no trees are gonna be taken down.
And
You already have aerial wires across that whole pole line, so the wires aren't gonna go in any
but
different
the
directions.
wire is gonna be rewired, so,
But in the same directions the wires are right now.
but there doesn't need to be. If we rewire, if they're gonna rewire, they could rewire in order to save some of the trees.
I think to Al's point, if you drive on Aquatic, there are a bunch of trees that are marked. And the question is whether that's due to this work or is it something else? And
Well, I believe
The
Don has
answer is
said
it's just something
it's
else.
something else.
it is just something else,
It's
okay.
something else, not this.
Okay. It'd be good to, I guess, you know.
Yeah, and I can't honestly answer why those trees are marked.
We'll find out, but
Yeah.
it has nothing to do with these.
Right, okay, that's, I think that's,
Okay, okay.
Gentleman in the back?
Hi, David Calcani, 225 Old Bay Road. Just sort of some observations. None of these poles are going in my front yard, thank God, and so I really don't have a dog in this fight. But just a little data, and and this is particularly aimed at the three of you selectmen, to implore you for your help with this. Today I drove from Aquatic, the stretch between 117 and Old Bay Road, which is ostensibly a beautiful section of town. There are 49 poles in that stretch of 0.8 miles, which is basically a pole every 85 feet. I don't know if that's the standard or whatever, but what is another thing, what is a common sense and objective is that it's an eyesore. The poles are leaning, the poles are antiquated, there are clusters of 2 poles and 3 poles. There are poles held together with each other with 2x4s nailed into the poles. It looks like a display from the Museum of Obsolete Technology. The only thing missing are the hula hoops. It's really an embarrassment that this is allowed to happen in our community, where we pride ourselves on the pastoral nature of our community. This is a mess. This company came to us 5 years ago with a petition to put in new poles to upgrade the grid. Now, I'm certainly not opposed to upgrading the grid, certainly not. Hopefully, with one caveat, hopefully upgrading the grid has nothing to do with land-based telephone lines. Because with the Generation Xers coming up, land-based telephone lines are already going the way of the hula hoop. We don't need any more of those. But I strongly urge, and your company's credibility with folks like me is zero. You folks sat here 5 years ago and promised us that when you put up these duplicate poles, that you would immediately transfer the service to the new poles and take down the existing poles. 5 years ago, we have implored you, private citizens calling, our selectmen calling, other people calling, nothing has happened. National Grid came within a year and moved all the electric service over. There's no power lines still on the old poles. But either Verizon or whoever leases the poles from you has failed to do so, and no pressure has been brought to those people. So before we get into bed with these folks again, I would really strongly urge the selectmen, as part of your charge to the people of Bolton, is you have to protect us. And this company has proven that their credibility in this arena is extremely limited. And before we just give them free rein to do whatever they want to do, and they come up and make a mess, and then they drive away and never come back, we have to drive by this every day. And I would implore you gentlemen to protect us in this situation.
Mr. Lowe, could you please repeat for the audience what you told me concerning our ability to limit things relative to double poles and what the state statute is?
I spoke with Representative Hogan this afternoon because this has come up in the past. And state law prohibits us from linking existing double poles to approving new pole locations. Representative Hogan has filed legislation in the past to change that so that we could link it. And so far, she's been unsuccessful in getting that legislation through the House. She is resubmitting it in the new session. So the Board of Selectmen have charged me with following up on this in the past. I have followed up with Representative Hogan. Representative Hogan feels very strongly about this and is doing everything she can to support her communities in order to be able to deal with the double pole issue, but so far she has not been able to get enough of her colleagues to support the effort.
Well, with all due respect to Selectman Wysocki, I heard this the first time this was presented. The question I have is there anything that the selectman or the town administrator can do, or we as townspeople can do, to bring pressure to bear on Verizon or on National Grid to clean up the mess they've created on Wattaquatic Hill Road?
Other than calling the representatives of the company, no. And actually, what tends to be more effective is bringing pressure to bear on the legislators, which we have done, and the more citizens they hear from, the better. And then that in turn helps them, in this case Representative Hogan, go to her colleague, receive this number of phone calls, this is unacceptable in my district, and it can't do anything but help the effort that she's already trying to undertake.
Right, because I spoke with Don earlier about this, and sorry, not to shoot the messenger, but whether or not we could deny these poles until they took care of the double poles that already exist, or if there were double poles being proposed for these three petitions, if we could write some conditions that would say that they would have to supply us with a letter that said by X days after or whatever, they have to remove them. And we can't do either one of those.
So one question, just one last question.
You know, I think we have another one of these hearings, so I guess.
One more time. If this is a fait accompli, why have the meeting?
No, you just saw an illustration of this. There's somebody who has legitimate concerns about a pole in front of her house, and she's been heard, and the company's responded to that. That's why we have these hearings, that we have very limited ability beyond that to stop these utilities, but that's an exact example, and I think we want to sort of honor her concerns, and it sounds like that, the company's willing to do that as well. So, are there any other comments on these 4 poles, not on the sort of the theoretical issues?
Yes. Jay Lewisberger, Coventry. You could be creative and find another reason for denying it.
On these 4 poles?
That was my question.
Be creative and find another reason for denying
I heard you, and I'm speaking to the gentleman behind you. It sounds like you've taken the words out of his mouth.
I'm so sorry. Yeah. What was the language you used on the statute, Larry? Was it uncommodable?
Incommodable.
Incommodable. Meaning making it difficult to drive or pass through, or impossible, difficult to use. What I'm trying to say is it's a matter of interpretation. It's well within your rights to say, look, having 49 poles and 1.8 miles makes this road impossible for us to use. It's difficult. We're going to deny.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Lavin. That's an absolutely ridiculous
You love to laugh at these. Why? Why? Because if you start denying their petitions, maybe they'll start taking your petitions seriously. They won't listen to a word you say about removing these extra poles. Get creative, like the young woman suggested. If we can start saying, look, you find all sorts of reasons why you can't remove these poles. Well, look, 28, poles in this much room, makes it very difficult to drive. Older people, that gets very confusing. I have trouble driving that room with all those poles, and we can deny their statutes. I mean, why not get creative like that?
Martha?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. There's another pattern that's emerging about wires. It probably is more National Grid than Verizon that's doing this. Wires or guy wires that are wrapped in caution yellow insulation. And you'll see a sign that says low wires. You see them on the superhighways. I saw one.
Does this have to do with these poles,
Yes,
Martha?
because
It doesn't.
it does, Mr.
No,
Chairman,
I-
because
you
she
know-
said a guy wire was going to be replaced from the new pole across the street, from
And
the
that's-
stub pole.
That's
And
actually
is that going to be
strand.
wrapped in caution yellow?
That won't be a guy wire, that'll be a strand, it'll go from the top of this pole
And it
across the
won't
street
be
to the top of
caution
that pole.
yellow.
Not up in the air like that.
Thank you.
All right.
I have just one more question.
Sure.
How many feet are supposed to be between each pole? Either the new ones or the new and existing?
There's no standard, the engineer uses the measurement considering the weight on the poles and how many attachments are going on there. But there's no set code or standard that says it has to be this.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand, because the two poles that are near me are pretty close to me. One's on one side, the driveway next to me, and one on the other side of the other driveway. So they're probably maybe 100 feet apart right now.
And again, with the extra weight on the poles,
Yeah.
the wires tend to pull down. And what happens is on the side of the road, I believe, and I could be wrong on this, I believe the wires are supposed to be at least 16 feet above the street. So crossing your driveways and stuff, they need to make sure those clearances are met.
But there isn't a standard as far as...
Correct, it doesn't matter, you can put them 5 feet apart or, 205 feet.
All right, thank you.
I guess I will move that we approve these polls with the condition that Verizon and National Grid on the placement of pole T62-5 and the owners at 408
Yes.
Quadaquatic agree on the final position of that pole.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
All right?
All right. Well, you know the drill now. This is another poll hearing. It's the petition of Verizon New England and Massachusetts Electric to place one pole on Old Bay Road on the easterly sideline, approximately 47 feet south from the center line of Wattaquatic Hill Road. Do we have any on this pole?
Of course.
Right?
First of all,
Put it in the, we wouldn't want to be in the way of a pipeline.
no. You may have to move it again. You might have to have trouble with that later, but let's not worry about that tonight.
Right.
No, I want you to rest assured, I am not against it, that's number one. But I want to understand, this is a, three-phase that's going from 117 to Clinton?
I don't know where their lines are, where their road is. I just know they're upgrading the poles on Wattaquatic Hill
Okay,
Road.
right, okay, all right. Let's go to the pole itself. The reason for this pole in this corner is to carry the weight. It's coming from the pole across the street and then goes up our driveway. Is it to carry the weight of the wires
It's
coming
the
up
weight and the
the road
clearances.
or coming across?
No, it has to do with the Wattaquatic pole line.
There's another pole right over here. Is it carrying weight here? Is that the deal?
I thought this one was going down Wattaquatic, not
No, this is
across.
going on the corner.
Right, I know where the
Okay.
pole's going, but I'm thinking it's supporting the lines on Wattaquatic, not the
The
lines
water,
on
the
Old Bay.
Wattaquatic line comes right in here, from this side, it crosses over, and comes over here. So, that's, I'm not saying you don't need it and so forth, but I just wanted to understand where the wires were going. And my caution here is that that's a terrible intersection. And I've been, maybe it was you, but I was with a guy that poked the stake in, and he had it up further. And Vinnie, if you're still in the room, I really want you to look at that intersection. Where the stake is, I asked him to move it down. And the reason for it, there are 2 trees that are there that are not in the line of sight of exactly. But every time you get a pole, you always have some problem in an intersection. And because there are 2 or 3 trees there, it kind of makes a wall if you look at all 3. In other words, because it's a bad intersection, you come up, you glance, and you have a line of sight that could be interfered with. That's number 1. So I just wish he would take a look at it with that in mind. And, do you understand what I'm saying? Vinnie, are you still back there?
I'm behind you.
If you could take a look at that, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
I have a question. I think it's okay where it is. The other reason is that, you know, I'm not the greatest hay wagon driver, and I come up around there and I gotta make that sharp turn to go in there. And I just as soon not lose the back of the hay wagon. And so if it's out on the road anymore or so forth, that is an issue. And the guide wire for that, I really would like to know where that's going, because that also can affect.
Well, if there's a guy wire on the pole, it's gonna go away from the street, it'll go into the woods side of it, so that won't be an issue as far as you driving.
Okay, so I understand it doesn't go towards the road, but remember, we were not sure where these wires were being supported, the wires coming up here, or the wires coming across water product. And if your guide wire is gonna go this direction, you're gonna be right in the entrance to our field. And we already have problems with one that is there with the hay rakes and so forth. So I just would like to be aware of where the pole is actually going when we get all done, and where the guide wire would be, that's all. I'm not asking the pole not to be there, but I'm sort of like the woman that had it in her view. I'd like to see it, to make sure it's a really safe area and not interfering with either, with our use or traffic.
Well, would you be satisfied with a similar approval, sort of contingent
Yeah,
on their
exactly.
satisfying you? Or, because our alternative would be just to continue this hearing and have folks out there confirm and have them come back here. But if you're,
No, I'm in the same-
you're the only person that matters here.
If Vinnie would do it
Yeah.
with me, I'd appreciate it. Okay? And, no, I think he should, I really do. I really think he needs to, for the police and not me. Because I like where the stake is, I think it's okay. This came out, okay. I asked about that letter, and the trees are staying.
Correct.
Okay, according to the tree warden, the trees are staying, right? I have nothing, I don't know, I haven't communicated with the tree warden. That's it. I'm not asking, I'm asking for a slight condition there. That's the other one.
That's,
It's mostly
you're
the safety issue.
absolutely within your rights there.
And Nancy, as I said with the other lady, once you've worked that out with the chief, if you could just email me and let me know that things have been sorted out, so I can.
Okay, can I know where the guide, one of the things that I'd like to know is where the guide wire is going.
I can just show her this.
And also, I still want the answer, although you don't have to do it tonight, of why the pole is there, what is it supporting, which wires, okay? We don't have to do any more.
Yep, what I can show you is, this is their engineering sketch
Okay.
here. Here's the pole on the corner where it
Yeah.
is, so the guy wire is going that way, so it'll be parallel with water class.
Parallel, okay.
Yep.
Not this,
So,
not on
perpendicular off a little bit.
Okay, okay, and that's where the marker is right now,
Yes.
okay, because that's been debated slightly. Okay, good enough.
There was a stake on that corner when I was out
Yep,
there,
I
and it
know
was
there is.
kinda
There is a
off in the
stake.
woods,
I
it wasn't
was
really,
part of it.
and I,
Well, we'll make sure that you're,
I was part of putting it
that you're
there,
part
I
of it
know.
again, yeah.
And you said there was some debate about it, that's why I wanted to make sure it's where the stake is staying.
Are there any other comments on this poll?
Mr. Chairman, I just had one comment. Prior to the pole that was most recently placed near your hayfield, Ms. Case. These were the only poles from Old Bay down to West Berlin. That scenic hill, as you come up and see the hayfield, there is one new pole there now. They were all on the old road, which runs through the center of her property. So we now will have 2 poles in pretty close proximity. I'm just mentioning that this is an historic landscape and a scenic road. Old Bay is a scenic road. Thank you.
All right, any other comments?
So I will move that we approve this poll with the
Survey with the fringe.
caveat that Nancy Case and Verizon or Mass Electric agree on the exact location and location of the guy wire. Make sure that's out of your way.
I'll second that.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank
All right,
you.
thank you.
I'll catch up with the people outside. I will be in touch with you.
My contact information.
I can get you. All right. Perfect, I will be in touch. Thank you. Nancy?
Yeah.
And did everyone leave?
Yes, she did.
Okay.
All
Need
right.
to see what happens.
The next item on our agenda is a discussion with the planning board regarding a proposed bylaw prohibiting jake breaking. No, Jonathan, come on down. Sorry, we're, our poll hearings took longer than 5 minutes, I allocate each of them. Is there a copy of the text in the packet?
Oh,
The jake break, the thing that, Erica had sent around at one point.
I don't think so.
No. All right. Her language, the jake break language.
There you go.
Great.
I have my notes on it.
Why don't I just read this? What's being proposed is a new bylaw. I guess it'd be an administrative bylaw, not a zoning bylaw. But the title will be excessive noise from compression brakes prohibited, except in the case of an emergency. It is unlawful for the driver of any vehicle to use or operate or cause to be used or operated within the town limits of the town of Bolton any compression brake, engine brake, dynamic brake, or mechanical exhaust device designed to assist in the deceleration or braking of any motor vehicle if such device or devices result in excessive, loud, or otherwise unusual noise. Violation shall be punishable by a fine of $200. And what was the genesis of this? I guess folks who live on Main Street have probably been putting up with this noise for a while, right?
Yeah, so if, I live at 752 Main Street, and it's right near Manor Road and 117, so that's where the trucks probably start back at Wilder Road. They put on the jake brake as they're coming towards 495, so it's this slow blub, 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 to bring their down to 30 or 35. So I start to hear that at 4:30 in the morning, and it probably goes till 9 or 10 at night. So I've heard that there are dairy trucks coming down from Vermont, going to the Hood plant, and then it's all sorts of vehicles all day. But I don't think it's just my area. I think perhaps, you know, in your neighborhood, you hear the trucks coming down from the high school towards Bolton Flats. They, you know, instead of using their brakes, they're using their Jake brakes, and it's just going blub, 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 all the way down the hill. And, you know, much louder than that. So I think that has an effect, you know, on the quality, everybody's quality of life in Bolton. And it's not just people right on 117 or 111 or Wattaquatic, which are, you know, 3 of the major truck shortcuts, but it's people who live a quarter of a mile, maybe even up to a half a mile from those roads. So it has a real impact.
To support what Jonathan is saying, I did receive an email from one resident who, I think based on what they had, I don't know if they read or observed, but they seemed to interpret that this was only going to be applicable to Route 117, and this person lives on Route 110, and said, hey, I've got that problem on Route 110 too, how about 110? So I'd just like to make it clear that the intent of this bylaw is wide and not specific to one geographic area.
Sure.
I agree.
Where did you get this model from? This.
To be honest with you, I looked at other towns' bylaws and I grabbed the language from other towns.
So other towns in the Commonwealth have approved it, have gotten this
similar
past the
bylaws.
Attorney General's
Yes,
office.
and I have a list of those towns actually. It's Linfield, Northampton, Holyoke, Pittsfield, Salisbury, and Oxford.
Yeah.
So it's quite a few
Mhm.
towns that have this on their books.
I heard, I guess I overheard, there was a comment when we had the fellow from DOT in, and someone asked him about whether this, you know, could be done, and I think, you know, regardless of it being a state numbered highway, it sounds like there's no prohibition there. He threw out the notion that perhaps there could be liability issues if somebody doesn't, you know, has an accident and said, oh, but for my Jake brakes, I could have stopped in time. I don't see that as a particularly compelling issue, but I guess, you know, it's something that ought to be, you know, a little thought given to, but.
Yeah, no, I have thought about enforcement.
Yeah.
And I think in the first case, you know, as part of this traffic ordinance, you know, it's important that, it might be important that we follow, you know, the federal government has guidelines for trucks, and it's, you know, they require trucks to emit less than 80 decibels when they drive by, measured at 50 feet. So it's something that you can measure. So I think maybe adding that specific language to the bylaw will make it stronger, you know, linking it with the federal. I've done some reading and that's been recommended. You know, the other thing, you know, posted signs with the fines on them, I think that's a really important deterrent. And then, you know, in the third case, I think it would be great if we could purchase a decibel meter. This would be equipment for the police department to use and, you know, to register the sound of, you know, the trucks using brakes. And this would be a process of giving warnings to truck drivers who are using Jake brakes unnecessarily, and then, you know, after a warning, giving them a ticket. So that's kind of the process.
Do you have a sense how much that equipment costs?
Well, you know, on Amazon there was, you know, one.
There was an app for that.
It was $350 to $500 for one that was advertised being used by police departments. So this, you know, part of this is the Jake brake itself, and then, you know, in my reading, another part of it is that a lot of these trucks, their mufflers have been modified or they're defective, and that's also part of what is amplifying the regular Jake brake sound. So that's, you know, also an issue part of this issue, and, something that police departments definitely, stop cars that have modified brake systems to be louder, motorcycles, or, people driving through with holes in their mufflers, and it's a similar sound.
All right, well, I think it's certainly a real issue, and I wouldn't have any problem with presenting this to town meeting for their consideration. I'm not sure it's really the planning. I think perhaps the Board of Selectmen ought to be the sponsor rather than the planning board, because it's not a zoning issue. But you've done all the work. I don't. I think with an addition of a decibel qualifier, I think it makes it, could be something that might be clearer to enforce, so it's not so subjective. I think it's a good idea.
No, I think so too, but I think it really should be sponsored by the Board of Selectmen, because it's really not a zoning bylaw.
Yeah.
Well, as the person who mentioned the Jake brakes at that hearing, and somebody who has had my foundation shake ever since we moved to town 30 years ago, I would just like to ask, will the Board of Selectmen propose this bylaw? Will you submit it to the warrant? Because I think it's you're saying that the planning board shouldn't do it. I think Jonathan has done and Erica have done a wonderful job researching the issue.
I was saying they would.
I think they would. You don't take yes for an answer. Oh, all right, well, that's wonderful. And my next question is, and it's from my former neighbor, Vinny. I have lived on Main Street for 30 years, more or less. I have never seen a truck stopped by a Bolton patrolman, ever, in that time.
Well, I can answer that. Let's see, last year, we wrote 1,487 tickets.
Right.
Many of those were trucks. I myself has stopped trucks.
That's wonderful.
Lieutenant Nelson probably stops 5 trucks a week. So I can unequivocally tell you that if you go on any internet, the reputation Bolton has for stopping all types of...
Keep it up. It's
good. But I do want to caveat that we don't just go out and stop. No, they're a truck, right? We have to see a motor vehicle violation.
Oh, I understand.
And I will say that most of the trucks are trained professional drivers, and they drive better than most of the people in town. So we don't have a lot of motor vehicle violations by the trucks.
It's good.
Chief, did you have any other comments on this proposal?
Yes, I did, because I've spent quite a bit of, followed it. Erica's been wonderful. I've spent quite a bit of time researching this. I've reached out to a number of communities and spoken with their police departments as well to see what types of issues they confront. Having lived right across the street from Mr. Keefe from the Planning Board for 9 years and lived next door, I certainly can attest to noise from those brakes.
Yeah.
However, I absolutely caution the board and I caution the town, because I do have concerns. And I've outlined those to Erica, but I can give you a thumbnail sketch of them. First, Jake brakes, and Jake is a generic term, it's like Kleenex. There are different types of compression brakes. In 2006, they stopped putting those into vehicles. It's old technology. So, and I've spoken at length with Harold Brown, our DPW director, who is our town expert on trucks, heavy trucks. Any issue with Jake brake noise would come from trucks prior to 2006. So the newer trucks don't have those. They have a different type of compression braking system that's very quiet. There are some rogue truckers out there, as you brought up, that will modify their exhaust pipes, and they're the ones that really make that offensive, very loud noise. There's still some of them out there. Eventually, this program will be self-correcting this problem, because the older trucks, they have a life expectancy. They'll be taken off the road. So that is something that it's not going to affect us immediately, but it will happen. I have a concern that Jake brakes and compression brakes are original manufactured equipment on factory vehicles. They're approved by the federal government in all 50 states. as a piece of integral vehicle safety equipment. I have concerns if the town makes a law basically telling operators and making it a crime for vehicle operators to use a piece of safety equipment on their vehicle, that it is not illegal in all 50 states to use. I'll give you an analogy. It'd be like saying to a driver, you can't use your high beams on your headlights when you go through a certain street because the light will go in the houses of the neighbors and it'll bother them. Not as offensive as a loud noise, same principle. So I do have a concern with that, and I do have a concern with liability as well. Because should there be an accident, and a driver is prohibited by a Bolton bylaw from using a Jake brake, I think they'd get a pretty good chance in court against the town, saying that, well, I would have used that, but I didn't want to break the law. So I can't cite any cases, I couldn't find any, but I'm not saying it couldn't happen. So that's a concern as far as liability for the town.
Any other?
I have more.
Oh, I should have known.
As we know, our DPW fleet, they're not the queens of the ocean out there. And all of our DPW trucks, the plows and the sanders, have Jake brakes. So we basically be telling our town employees that they can't use that safety equipment when they're out plowing and sanding. Again, a concern. Let me finish.
So wait, all our trucks are so old? They
Yes.
all predate 2006?
Yeah, Director Brown confirmed.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's a concern. When I spoke with other police chiefs, including one town which was the model for the bylaw that we used, the words that were used were unenforceable. The courts have specifically told police departments, you can write all the tickets you want. If they appeal them and they come to court, we're going to throw them out. So there are a lot of costs involved with this. Number one, Mr. Keith mentioned sound equipment. There's more than spending $350 and buying a decibel meter. Number one, those meters have to be calibrated on a regular basis, similar to radar. Number two, the operators have to be trained. Huge expense to train our entire police department on how to operate a decibel meter. They also have to be recertified. Again, an expense. If we were to issue tickets to truck drivers for violation of a Jake brake law, and they challenge it, our officers have to go to court on overtime and sit in court and basically have that ticket thrown out. That's a waste of town money, which I think those resources could be used better ways. So,
But do you think really trucking dollars, they're going to hire a lawyer to appeal it?
Because the drivers, that's their driving record, so they would. Individual drivers would. So I propose a suggestion. Yes, I do believe the noise is offensive, and yes, I do believe everybody has a concern. But I think instead of telling the truck drivers and threatening them with a fine, don't use your Jake brake or else, why don't we first try asking them? Why don't we put up some signs in town? And actually, I figured out some wording I think that would be appropriate. Please limit use of compression brakes ahead. If we were to put those signs up at $100 a sign, in the areas of town where the Jake's brakes are used, and there are certain areas as opposed to willy-nilly through town, and they're generally specifically when trucks come out of speed zones, let's try putting those signs up first, before we put the town out there and start spending thousands of dollars on equipment. Let's try $400, $500 worth of signs, and let's see if it works. And I'm pretty sure that most of those truck drivers, if we put those signs in the right places, they will heed that, the ones that are using the Jake brake. So my suggestion, before we get involved in something else.
Though if they heed that, they'd heed a sign that said no Jake brakes, $200 fine, and you don't have to issue any tickets. Right?
Well, what you're saying is we have to sign that don't enforce it.
Huh? Right. In the back?
Yeah, I'm Russ Adini, 123 Wilder Road. I've lived in Bolton about 25 years, Wilder, because I wanted to avoid a high-traffic route, given the fact that truck traffic has been on this road for a long time. I've been involved in logistics for like 44 years, fleet management, safety, have a Class A CDL, own a Class 8 truck. I'm speaking on behalf of My wife, though, daughter-in-laws, and grandkids. As the chief says, these things are truly safety devices. And in particular, when you look at the hill on 117 headed toward 110, the majority of the 5-axle trucks that travel this road are at the state max of tolerance, 104,000 pounds. It's a lot of weight. It's a safety factor, plain and simple. The liability issue, we all know, the world is full of lawyers. Hope there aren't any in the room.
Some closer than you think.
Right. You shouldn't have said that. The one thing that I was going to mention, and strangely, the chief brought it up, in my mind, a better alternative is exactly what the chief proposed. Put a sign up that says, respect your neighbors, minimize Jake brake use. And believe me, okay, it is not a secret that you don't speed in 5 axles going through Bolton. If you did, you maybe, okay? We have a reputation. I will assume it's a good one, of course, but we do have a reputation on the road. And I think that I'm sympathetic to those who have to contend with the barking of a Jake at 4 in the morning. And by the way, they're controllable on the old vehicles. They're 3 different settings, okay? If someone's driving at a reasonable speed, they're not gonna be making that tremendous staccato noise. But it truly is a safety device on the older vehicles, and I think that signage, or the proper signage, will do an awful lot to effectively minimize the problem. And as the chief says, it is going to be a diminishing problem.
Jane, Inspector Coventry, I would like to ask the chief if signs were put up, would you be willing to have your officers stop those truck drivers who didn't honor the signs and made a lot of noise, and just have a nice conversation with them about the importance of honoring the signs?
Which signs? The bylaw violation signs or my suggestions?
The ones you suggest. The ones you
No,
suggest.
we would certainly, from an education process, we would certainly have no problem speaking with truck drivers.
Because I think that addition would help a lot.
See, the problem is it's the enforcement aspect of it.
Yeah, I heard.
Because even in the bylaw, there's a caveat, there's a safety valve there for the driver that says, well, all the drivers emergency because I felt my load shifting, and we can't issue a ticket, so it's a futile attempt. So from an education standpoint, I think we'll get the results that we want.
What?
Martha Remington, I live at the T intersection of Route 85 and 117. I brought up to Chief Alfano's attention some years ago that in Holliston, they have these big signs, the diamond yellow signs, oversized with black letters, no Jake brakes. They do not have, or did not at the time, have any bylaw. But this just reminds people, they're going through a community where people live, and I think we could try the signs before we had a bylaw. But it's just horrible on 85 now. Just horrible. And every truck can't be doing an emergency stop. It's mainly the construction trucks.
No, I read that truckers would sometimes use that compression brake to save their regular brakes.
Yes.
So when there's, not necessarily a safety issue.
So, yeah, so it's a choice. They have conventional brakes, but they're deciding, and maybe their bosses are telling them to use the Jake brakes because it reduces wear and tear on their brake system, and the downtime of having those brakes serviced. So we put up with the noise, and they're saving their brakes through our town, and it's not something they have to do. They just do it, and they do it right through town. They do it, and they're just slowing for a car pulling out of the library. They do it as they approach Wattaquatic because things slow down there. So basically, it's just a low rumble that goes through town, and it's not necessary. So it's really pretty disrespectful. It's a way for them to save money, but they're not really concerned about how it affects us.
Josh Elsky at 29 Water Aquatic. So we're in a new house with new windows. I can't even hear the fire department or the police station going in and out, but we can hear the Jake braking going down the hill, coming down the Neshoba. Answering his question, which she mentioned is true, the Jake braking is basically a choice. It does have safety features, which I can understand on Water Aquatic because of the steepness, but coming down the middle of the street, it's basically safe brakes, wear and tear, laziness and shifting gears. That's what it saves on. There are dynamics on, I think, like 117. I can hear with the windows up near the Keeps house. A lot of it's got to do with like the cross section there of Manor Road. There's a lot going there. The speed limit, in my opinion, is a little still high in that area. So they come in through that area and they're hitting unexpected traffic. I don't see signs that say reduce speed, so that they have even warnings to say that it's going from. Is there? Yeah. So I'm new to the area, but is it far enough out to, is it pretty abrupt, and that's why we're having.
It is.
To Jake braking in those areas, because I can hear it from our own house and with respect to that. So I think there's solutions, but at the same time, I think there's choices on the trucker's part to not use them.
Yeah.
Yeah. It occurs to me, it doesn't bother me as much as it probably bothers Vinnie that it might ultimately be unenforceable, and whether we actually write tickets or not. I would just wonder if this couldn't be more like part of a more general unnecessary noise bylaw. Eric has come up with this, this 85 dB at 50 feet, which seems like a pretty good figure. And if we generalize that, then there's always our out for liability is the unnecessary part. And we have the unnecessary noise, and there are other ways in which you can make unnecessary noise, that it would be nice to generally have a basis on which to complain about.
What other noises are you concerned about?
I don't want to get into this too much now, but there are construction activities, like certain construction activities and flushing of pipeline.
I believe we already do have a noise bylaw.
It may not be as specific as Erica has been able to come up with.
Remember we discussed it years ago.
Well, it seems to me that the issue, 10 citizens can by citizen petition put an article on the warrant for town meeting, and so I think the issue for us is whether this is something that that this and I think it's an issue that there's certainly there's two sides to the debate, but the question for us is whether the selectmen should sponsor, or willing to sponsor something like this, or whether we think it should go the citizen petition route if folks want that on there. I guess I come out, I'm be willing to have the final Jake break bylaw sponsored by the selectmen, and let town meeting decide that. I don't know where you come out on that.
The chief raises some good points, and I think we need to deliberate those as well as what Mr. Keith has presented, and I think we should continue deliberation and decide whether or not it should be something that we want to sponsor, or if we're leaning towards trying the signs, but that the set doesn't satisfy the citizens. There's always a citizens petition out as well. But I don't think we should necessarily make a decision one way or other tonight, given some of the comments that we've heard from the chief and Mr. Keith tonight. I think we should continue discussion.
I tend to go with the chief and see, give it a year, put the signs up, give it a year, and if it's still an issue, then we have draft language for a bylaw at that point.
But I don't think we should make that decision tonight.
That I'm fine with that too. I just, I don't want a lot of regulations that aren't aren't enforceable, are difficult to enforce, or expensive to enforce, isn't necessarily the
right way to go.
the right way to go on some of these things, so. Clean.
What are the dates we need to be aware of, Tom, for town meeting?
All right, let's see if I can do this out.
5 minutes. Put it on the warrant.
We closed and signed the warrant right around April 1st, it could be April 3rd this year. The deadline for citizens petitions, I think, is March 20, it's either March 28th or March 31st. So I'm very safe saying the last week of March, so it's at least 4 weeks. We'll be meeting again on February 5th, and I think we can resolve this on February 5th about whether or not the board is going to sponsor it. And if the board sponsors it, then it's a moot point, and if it's not, then you've got 6 weeks to get 10 signatures. You can get 10 signatures.
March 30th.
Pretty quickly, okay. So I was March 30th. Well, I'm pretty pleased I remember that. So there would be ample time. And as Larry said, I know this will be resolved one way or another, I suspect February 5th.
Nancy?
I apologize for not being prepared, but this is for all roads in town, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Except, of course, 495, where they do it, but you really can't enforce it
No,
there
no,
because
I meant
it's
all.
No, roads and towns.
Yeah, I just want to say something about enforceability. I don't agree that exhortation, please respect your neighbor, is going to work. We already have 2 crosswalks in town that people never stop for pedestrians, or rarely. That's why I drive over here rather than walk, because I can't get across the street. I think having it known that Bolton has an ordinance will reduce the use of compression brakes. I gotta tell you, I'm a lawyer, don't call them Jake brakes, you get sued by Jacob's compression. So,
I think it's a generic term, though, that was used in the bylaw. It doesn't specifically.
No, it doesn't.
No.
The bylaw doesn't use
no,
that.
don't do that.
I don't think it's.
Anyway, I think having it known that there is a bylaw in town that says that compression, you should use them, as Jonathan said, is much more effective. Whether you can actually enforce it by going to court, you know, it's always discretionary with the police. But if they stop trucks because they're making too much noise and then send them on their way, that's one way to enforce it. It's not, you don't have to issue a ticket, but you do have in your quiver a way to reduce the use of this obnoxious practice. Just simply asking them to do it will not accomplish that goal. And I think it's a serious problem. I hope the selectmen support the bylaw, a new bylaw. If they don't, I want to know, can the planning board sponsor a bylaw? He's saying no. I don't know why that's so, but I think we need it.
Well, no, I guess we sort of have a intellectual problem with the planning board sponsoring a non-zoning article, and so there's an absolute route to get it onto the article if this board doesn't, I mean, onto the warrant, if this board decides that it wants to, you know, go the sign route or something like that. So I don't think.
Right.
But I mean, our little ritual, we have a town meeting, the planning board gives a report, it's only zoning articles that the planning board is doing it. They don't, it's advisory that has the sort of roving commission to opine on everything. All right, the last comment here on this.
Okay, I just want to point out that it's true that 10 citizens can get a bylaw on the warrant, but if it can't get passed by town meeting, but it still has to go to the AG's office. It'd be better if a board put it in.
Sure, but it sounds like if you have identical bylaw language from other towns that's been passed that AG muster, that's.
probably.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's gonna make much of a difference. So, all right, well, good.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, sure. Next item on our agenda, we went out of order here a little bit, so we are now up to Board of Selectmen's business, and this is a request by Jane that we relates to another proposed warrant. Why didn't you explain?
This is from the Stop the Pipeline Committee, and the request is that the resolution that you have already passed to stop the pipeline be put on the warrant for the May town meeting to have the whole town vote for it. We thought that would strengthen the resolution.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, no, I liked it when we approved it, and I have no problem with letting a town meeting vote on it, and I can see that adds something to it, and yeah, that's fine.
So there is an additional question about, have you considered that within this bylaw you have something that says we'll seek to intervene in any proceedings before the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission? And so the question is, have you put any money aside for the intervention?
I don't think we need
And would
any.
you? Well, it could mean hiring a lawyer. It could mean sending some people to Washington to comment to FERC.
It could, and I think if we have some amount of money that's available in the legal budget already, we have the ability to call a special town meeting to authorize those funds if and when they're required.
So you're positive toward it, you just don't think it's the time?
Well, first of all, I think that the intervention process at FERC is pretty easy. That if there's no opposition, they allow every motion to intervene in the proceeding. I think on this Constitution pipeline, I was reading their decision, they had 477 interveners were allowed. So I don't think there is a legal hurdle to intervening. It's the town certainly has an interest in this, and I don't see it as a challenging or expensive legal issue in order to intervene in the proceeding.
And if we did have the need to have someone testify in front of a hearing in DC, I do have discretionary funds available to me, and it wouldn't be an overly expensive trip.
They're not.
I mean, I'm just saying, if theoretically I did have to do
That's
that, I would have access to funds to do that would already be within my budget.
No.
Assuming it would be me that you'd want to go, which I assume it would.
But we had thought maybe a lawyer would be hired to do it. And so it might be a little expensive, but we do have a few of those.
As I recall, we had the casino issue. We put together our petition to be designated a neighboring community ourselves, and it was allowed by the Gaming Commission. And I think the town of Fitchburg, which actually was a surrounding community, spent $70,000 on lawyers and were denied. So I'm not worried about our ability to intervene.
It might be good to take comments from see who else is.
Sure.
I was gonna say, I'm probably very, I'm on the Conservation Commission too, and we actually planned, when we talked to the planning board, to bring up that case, knowing that money for legal funds might be coming down the pipeline. It might not be something that's really in this fiscal year, so it's something that's more just to kind of make it aware to them. Some of that legal action for our case would be mitigation. If the pipeline were to go through, protecting the town's rights, there's, whether it goes through, whether you're contesting it or you're allowing it to go through, there's reason you might need legal representation, and we are looking at that, and it's something we will be bringing up probably to the planning board and to the selectmen eventually.
No, and there may be some reason to sort of bump up our town council budget. I know Don rides them pretty hard, but.
No, we've, and we could, I mean, that's something that we will evaluate. I mean, I've got a $35,000 legal budget that I do manage very tightly, but if we were to bump it up some amount as part of our planning purposes now, we could do that. it wouldn't be, you know, a huge amount, because I think the thinking is that if a major issue came down the pike that was gonna require, say, a six-figure amount to deal with legal representation, we would call a special town meeting, and we would have very specific reasons for that, and we would present the rationale to the town and seek approval for that type of authorization then.
Right. Nancy?
Why don't you bump it up a little bit?
Well, that's what we're
Many
talking about.
times. So that if we can do something this year, it would be great.
Well, I can't.
We can't bump it up.
I can't bump up this fiscal year, but for FY16, yes, we are, that's one of the things that we're talking about.
Some each year, because this isn't gonna come about for another year or two, so.
Well, I mean, if we're gonna come up, if we thought something were gonna come up in FY16, and it didn't come up,
Yeah.
then I would probably look to bump it a like amount as 16 into 17, just because we haven't gotten to the
Okay, then
expense
we can do
yet.
that later, but the idea is to do it.
Yes, exactly.
Look, we have other people in town who would argue for not putting any extra money aside.
Fine. But we're just saying.
So is there anything else that we need to do, or?
Well,
you're just
Mr.
gonna-
Wiley, I think, had a
Hi,
comment.
David Wiley, 201 Green Road. I'd just like to, I appreciate what's been said and the assurance that's been given on. I'd just like to add a thought, because I've read some of the FERC decisions, and while it certainly is desirable, and nobody here, I guess, knows at the moment what the town's intervention would say. But I'd just like to add a cautionary note that from what I've read in the FERC decisions, while it may be very useful and helpful and desirable to have towns and individuals and organizations intervening and saying we're against it and then stating some general principles, it really, a good plan calls for going well beyond that. And the Pipeline Summit, which Mr. Delaney attended to at Fitchburg, as we called it, so the anti-pipeline people meeting in Fitchburg, had some presentations by lawyers who have some experience in these things. And we received a very strong message that what's most useful and what's really needed is to use the intervention process to create an appealable record, because there's a very good chance that FERC is going to decide in favor of the pipeline, and what's needed is to build a court case. And in order to build a court case, there need to be factual statements about whatever it is the town or any intervener is concerned about, factual statements, if possible, legal research, and saying, and I'll give you an example. What the FERC proceeding is on the question of shall a certificate be issued to the pipeline stating that it's in the public convenience and necessity to have this pipeline. And public convenience and necessity is used in many statutes at all levels of government. It's a very common thing. It's been construed by a great many cases in many different types of proceedings. And so the danger is FERC saying, oh, well, it's in the public convenience and necessity, without really considering the details of what is in the public convenience and necessity of the New England consumers who are the targeted consumers for this pipeline. So all I'm saying is that a really good intervention calls for legal research, a lot of thought and originality, and creating a record that will be appealable to the courts.
You know, on this point, there is going to be an open house. It's what day?
Next Wednesday, the 28th.
At the Berlin Elementary School, I think from 6 to 8, and this is going to be. There will be representatives from FERC there, but I guess I'd urge anyone who has an interest in this to show up as well. Their informal process. This is an open house sort of sponsored by Kinder Morgan, and they'll presumably be, you know, giving their spin on this, but there will also be FERC representatives there, and I think it's something I'd urge anyone who's interested in this issue to go to. There are going to be subsequent scoping meetings sponsored by FERC in which they take comments from from folks, and I think we ought to participate in that as well. But just so people know, it's this upcoming Wednesday.
Can we record those proceedings? Can we make records of those proceedings?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you know, you're probably on your cell phone unless the Kinderborg goons wrestle you out.
We could hire somebody to do it, or we could be, if we are doing it, we could be doing our own.
Well, you know, I don't know. I have no sense of the format, how this open house. I would think there would be little discussions in this open house format with people trying to sort of spin little groups. So I think that might be harder to record.
Well, so you will take care of this. This will be on the
Yes.
warrant.
The resolution will be on the warrant.
Okay. You don't need to pass a motion?
Well, I mean, we're going to be talking about the warrant a lot April, but it'll be on the list.
I was going to have a first draft for the February 5th meeting. I'm wondering if it might not go out to February 26th, but I'll certainly have a first draft to town council first week of February.
All right. Yeah, no, I think we're probably getting a little booked for the the 5th. Yeah. The next item on our agenda is to review the process for dangerous dog hearings.
Are they dangerous hearing? There's a case for
It's on the back page of the...
Okay. No. Yes, okay.
Oh, yeah,
Eats fruits and leaves. Is that the title of her book? Punctuation.
So the proposal that I guess the chief has put together, that this dangerous dog hearing board with chief, a current town constable, and a member of the board of selectmen, or if we didn't like that idea, perhaps a volunteer resident representative of the community. But you know, I was looking at the statute, and I'm not sure this sort of committee is an option. I think the chief by himself is an option, or the selectmen could continue to do this. But let me see if I can find where I had this. It seems as though the definition of this committee did not include the sort of constructing this. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure we can do this, or whether it would have to be, if we wanted to do this, whether it have to be something town meeting voted on, as opposed to us just saying it's done. What this is, there's a hearing authority is defined in the statute, and the hearing authority is who holds the dangerous dog hearings. And it can be the selectman of a town, chief of a police department, the chief's designee, or the person charged with responsibility for handling dog complaints in the town. So I have a question as to whether we can, with that language, say we're going to have a committee instead. I don't know. But
I can get an answer to that pretty easily. In fact, I could probably get a pro bono at MMA tomorrow, but I manage that legal budget.
Yeah, no, because I like as you saw at the last meeting, I like the idea of transferring this authority away from, and there's still, whoever is making the decisions, it can still be appealed to the district court. And what we saw at our last hearing was, I mean, people who have problems with the dog can be litigious, and they can kind of appeal. And we were in that appeal. There was a technical problem we had made in terms of not swearing in a witness, but it was overcome by the technical issue that the dog owner had,
About
in
the
not having
timeliness
a
of the
timely appeal. So, I mean, it just strikes me that if we have a committee that doesn't follow the statute, it's gonna be, decisions are gonna be invalidated because of that.
It's a very emotional issue,
Yeah.
for sure, and as you say that, I do recall about a year or so ago, there was an area community that had, well, there were a couple of area communities that had dangerous dog issues, and one was addressed by the Board of Selectmen, but as you say that, the other was addressed by the so it wasn't a board. I had to remember that until you just said that. So, and it's been a while since I've read that statute too, but I suspect, now that you've said that, that you may be right, that if the responsible entity is the selectmen, then it's the Board of Selectmen. If it's the police department, then I think it is the chief, as you said, or his designee. So, but I'm starting to remember that, and I think it may be an individual rather than a board if it's not the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, no, it could be, but you thoughts?
Yes, when we looked at that, we unanimously felt that the statute obviously mentions it would be Susan, the person charged with enforcing that. We didn't feel it was really fair to have the person that's actually the prosecutor bringing the charges as a hearing official.
No, I don't think anyone's saying that, Chief.
Well, but that's an option. I mean, he's right, that's an option under the statute.
So that's why
Well, I'm just saying, I personally don't think that's a good option. I think I think it would be.
Susan probably didn't like it either.
If what you're saying and what I'm starting to recall is accurate, then I suspect that our good options would be either keeping the hearing responsibility under the Board of Selectmen or transferring it to the Chief of Police. But no, I don't think in any way, shape, or form the animal enforcement.
No, we were surprised to see that
also be
in
responsible.
the statute. And also, in any hearing board, sometimes it's one person, but obviously the statute deems it one person, so.
Right, and you make decisions like on sort of firearms and stuff, right?
All the time, yeah. I mean, I certainly have no problem with it, but we were trying to be fair to the people that would be coming before us, because obviously you have a better chance with more than one person of convincing somebody, but we would certainly work with Dawn on reviewing that.
Could I suggest that maybe, Dawn or somebody get a hold of ACOM, which is the Animal Control Officers Association of Massachusetts, because they are the ones that were really sort of precipitated a lot of the changes that, which are major, that have happened in the dog animal control laws in the last couple of years. They would be able to answer that in a heartbeat.
That's good.
Yeah.
Good idea.
I think we can get this resolved one way or the other. I mean, personally, I don't mind it staying with us, but, the chief is more accessible 5 days a week as opposed to us every other week or whatever, so I think that's, for the issue at hand, more time of the response would be obviously putting it in the hands of the chief.
It seems a little curious that they would have the Board of Selectmen as an entity running these hearings, or the police chief. That's three people.
Yeah.
Prosecutor.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
But in any event, I mean, there is this relief valve in terms of whoever is making the decision can always be appealed to the district court. But all right, well, no, I guess, I think the format of the committee seemed like a good idea to me, but it just seemed, I'm just not sure we can do it. So.
Okay.
All right.
That would be, they're gonna get more information before making a decision.
Right.
Okay.
Alan's looking into it. The next item on our agenda is a review of the January Tri-Town meeting. which was held in Stowe, and I think was probably the best attended and most valuable tri-town meeting I've ever been at.
For a long time,
2.5 years. I don't, it's certainly, yeah, in my tenure, it was the best, but, I don't know, Stan, you wanna sort of cover the highlights from your perspective?
Sure. Well, there were a number of agenda items that were discussed at the meeting. I have the list here. We'll just go through them. One was an update on the high school space needs committee. Their submission to the state on a report. I think part of the issue is that some of the committee members didn't feel that they were getting sufficient information from the school, and a joint decision was made to put that off until more information was gotten. So, it revolves around, the curriculum and the space that's required, and obviously the science labs and the cafeteria, et cetera, et cetera. So that continues to be discussed, which I think is probably a good choice. The next item that was discussed was the issue about parking. The residents of Green Road came to the Selectmen because of issues with special events at the school. Parking was being, people were parking on both sides of Green Road, and we have started to take some measures to look at the placement of some no parking signs. I don't know if the signs have been, the stakes have been repositioned.
No, we haven't done that site visit yet. We haven't scheduled that. I'm hoping to get to that next week.
Right, we originally envisioned putting no parking signs on both sides of Green Road from the intersection of Green and Main Street all the way up to the cemetery that's on Green Road. Residents expressed some concern about having as many signs there, and we tend to agree. And we're probably going to start with a plan to put no parking on the school side of Green Road. Discussion about additional parking within the school itself. The district is interested in taking the old tennis courts and converting them to additional parking, of which some of the Green Road residents aren't particularly thrilled of. I think we also discussed that, at least I discussed, that I'm not necessarily happy with having additional ingress and egress from those tennis courts to Green Road. So, that helped a little bit, but they're also looking at some other options as far as additional parking space. We also talked about the budget process. It's really early on, so there's really not a whole lot of information in that regard. There are some upcoming budget review meetings.
Well, and actually on the budget, they're changing their procedure this year, that they had, in fact, at our tri-town meeting, they were discussing their big Saturday budget session, but I gather, what's the latest on this? Because the school committee has changed their plans on when they're getting their budget presentation.
I guess a couple of school committee members were not available, so they're starting, I believe they're meeting the following week. They're starting at 5 p.m. To deal with the budget, or to have their budget hearing at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe that would be...
That's the old,
Oh.
That's last year.
Alrighty then. We are cutting back on things. Anyway, I believe it is the... I believe it's the Wednesday, that's the first...
it's the 11th.
Thank you.
The budget workshop is the 11th at 5.
I was going to say the second Wednesday in February with no idea what the date was. Thank you.
Okay, so if you can attend, please do that. There was also a discussion about half and full day kindergarten. There's still some controversy around that, which needs to be discussed further in terms of whether it's still a pilot program or not. And I think there was a significant amount of pushback from at least some members of the school committee and what the district was looking to do as far as that program, and looking at it as a pilot and evaluating it before making any decisions to either go all full day or still offer a half day. And there are school budget implications to moving it to all full day. So that would be, if it was all full day with no half day, There would be no cost to the parents of the kids going to the full-day kindergarten if it was all full day, which would then have an impact on the school budget, would have an impact on our budget. So more information on that as time goes on. I guess the last one, which probably generated the most discussion, was we've been discussing with the school committee in the district about our proficiency rating against other schools within the and how or what the plan was to try to improve that, even though some of those numbers are potentially manufactured numbers, but they do have an impact on MCAS scores, of which at least one member of our school committee has indicated that the district's MCAS scores are going down as opposed to going up vis-a-vis other communities in Massachusetts. We also learned that, and we asked about, how are you incorporating how to improve our rating vis-a-vis these district improvement plans, which span 1 or more years. And it came to our attention that in years past, that the quote-unquote district improvement plan was something that was generated by the district, and specifically Michael Wood, and sort of handed to the school committee, of which they then voted on. I think this year, a number of the school committee members wanted to take a slightly different approach and be more active in the participation of the development of the district improvement plan. Also, to have some more really quantitative ability to measure performance. Because if you have a line item for an improvement that you can't measure, then how do you measure improvement? And apparently there was a significant amount of discussion and delay in voting on the district improvement plan. This year, 3 out of the 7 school committee members voted against the plan because they felt it didn't include enough real measurable improvements that could be made year over year. And I think this is going to be a continuing dialogue, and I think I applaud the school committee for starting to take a more active role in looking at this than they have done in years past. Just to go back, at a Tri-Town meeting back in October, I believe was the October 1st meeting, when we were discussing school proficiency rankings of our district versus other districts in the state as measured by the Department of Education. One of the selectmen from Stowe asked a very pointed question of Mr. Wood, asking, in your tenure, where has the district and the high school in particular ranked during the 10 or so years during your tenure? And Mr. Wood replied that the rankings of the district and its various schools have remained fairly constant, up or down a little bit over the 10-year period. And where we sit as far as proficiency rankings are either at the bottom of the top 25 or the bottom of the top 20%. And the discussion at the last Tri-Town meeting was, how are we going to get these rankings up? How are we going to improve the performance of the schools? And there are, as I said, a number of the school committee members who are supporting that and are looking for ways to look for improvements and to have some measurable goals for the district so that we can, definitively show progress. And I think that was probably the one discussion that took up most of the time of the meeting. If you gentlemen would like to add anything.
I think that's a pretty good summary of the meeting.
So I would urge, all parents who have kids in school, talk to your school committee reps, take an active participation. I mean, we have a good school and good school system, but there's certainly areas that we can look to improve and make it better for the 3 towns that participate in the Neshoba Regional School District.
All right. The next item on our agenda is the review of minutes. Do we have any?
We have minutes for the regular Board of Selectmen meeting from September 25th and from the executive session on September 25th as well. I'll move that we accept the minutes.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And then we don't have a executive session.
We do not, but,
And-
I'm sorry, but Ken Troop did leave behind the agreement between the town of Bolton and Bolton Access Television Corporation designating Bolton the public education and government access provider, which is normally, it's time for renewal, and it has been already signed by Ken as their authorized signatory, so.
All right. That's right, your pen, so I don't sign with my red one.
And you have the, all the Verizon documents to sign for the full hearing, and the, bills and payroll warrant is here also.
Okay. Done? Another pen?
Yes.
Which
So
is
the
my
clerk,
signature?
yes,
You
and
say
then the,
under duress? Oh, no.
yeah, and then the selectmen sign on the other side. Yeah, then you guys
Would you be willing to entertain
So-
any new business?
I'm sorry?
Would you be willing to entertain any environmental new business?
Is it something that,
It's quick.
couldn't have been brought up beforehand?
Yeah, well, it's not really on your agenda, but
And that's,
But if it's an emergency, we could consider
It's an
it.
emergency. No, I just need some guidance. One of the things that are coming out of these pipeline meetings is this idea that to put up at town meeting, and I don't have the right words, resolution or whatever, whether it's a binding, non-binding. Shall the state representatives and the senator representing this district, meaning Bolton, be instructed to vote no on any legislation proposed to remove conservation land protected by Article 97 of the state constitution for protected status in order to install a high-pressure gas transmission line and related infrastructure. So that's what is in the works. When you told me that February 5th was so busy, I want to know if we should even bother to put this together. We're asking that.
No, sure, I think you should put it on the agenda. No, I understand what the issue is. There's apparently,
I know you do.
the legislature, if, I think on an unrelated to the current pipeline, Kinder Morgan is gonna ask the legislature to
That's
let them
right.
put a different pipeline through some sort of state forest or something, and it requires a vote by the legislature
right.
under this Article 97 of the Constitution. And the notion is get town meetings to tell their state reps how to
That's
vote,
right.
or encourage them how to vote. Though I think our state reps kind of already on board,
Well, I'm
right?
not sure. I'm not sure. Until the vote comes, I'm not sure. So
It
if
doesn't hurt
this,
to reinforce that.
if that is something that you would consider sponsoring, then we'll write it up on this Wednesday and get it to you by the 5th. But if you're so busy you can't even deal with it, then it's gonna have to be a citizens thing. I'd rather have it come off the selectmen, because it's the same idea as your resolution. You're protecting your conservation. We're gonna write it up and we're gonna submit it on the 5th, okay?
I think we could probably get that.
Okay, goodbye.
At the agenda.
Well, yeah, what you can do is submit it to me, and I can get it on the draft warrant,
That's, okay, that's great. I
and
just
then it
wanted
can be there for
direction.
the selectmen to
I
review.
just wanted direction.
So do it sooner rather
Yeah.
than later.
The meeting is this coming, this whole week, this whole
Okay,
week
Wednesday
is-
and then after,
Sure.
okay. All
It's,
right.
it's, you know,
So get it to me as soon as possible, and I'll get it in the first draft so the
that'd be
selectmen have
great.
it.
Okay, excellent, thank you very much.
you're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Okay, with that being said, I will move that we adjourn.
Second that?
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Oh, boy.